Welcome to Lesson 7 of Unit 3. Here we're going to look at how Unit 3 is assessed. You may already have looked at the ABRSM practice materials online and have a fairly clear idea of how you will answer questions. You'll see that the questions on the ABRSM site have tick box or drop-down menu options to select the correct answer from multiple choice selections. Now, I'm not a huge fan of multiple choice exams, as there's a good chance that students will get the answer correct even when they admit to being clueless. Now, by the time you are entered for your grade 5 theory exam, I hope you will certainly not be clueless. But in what follows, I'm not going to give you the luxury of a multiple choice selection to determine the right answer. We're going to look at a few examples of each type of question and work out what the correct answer is, as well as sometimes working out why some answers are wrong. Here goes. The first couple of questions in this section will ask you to select the correct version from 4 given key signatures. Let's have a look at the first one. Select the correctly written key signature for D sharp minor. And all the answers have 6 sharps, so one of them is definitely correct. I think the ABRSM are missing out on something important here. All they're asking you to do is firstly to remember the first 6 words of the sentence, Father Charles goes down and ends battle, and make sure that the key signatures have the sharps in that order. Secondly, they're asking you to ensure that treble bass and alto versions start on the F sharp nearest the top of the stave, and that the direction of sharps goes down, up, down, down, up, down, and that any tenor clef version starts with the F sharp nearest the bottom of the stave, and that the subsequent sharps go up, down, up, down, up, down. Now, if I were examining this, I would throw in rather more options than 4, and some of them would have 5 or 7 sharps to make you prove that you knew that D sharp minor had 6 sharps in the key sig. Better still, I'd present candidates with an empty stave and a click and drag menu of sharps and flats for you to drag whatever was needed to the correct place on the stave. There'd be much less chance of getting the correct answer by mere guesswork with such a question. Okay, so let's have a look at these answers. First of all, let's check against the Father Charles sentence. We can immediately eliminate the treble and bass stave versions because neither comply with that sentence. The treble clef version starts with goes Charles' father. Here is the correct version. The bass clef version ends with father instead of ends, as shown here. So we're left in this case with those in the 2 clefs most musicians don't really feel they know, the alto and the tenor clefs, and both have the correct sharps in the correct order, and both go up, down, up, down, up, down, and to the untrained eye look perfectly fine. But we know that it is only the tenor clef where the sharp key signatures go up, down, up, down, up, down, and that the alto clef sharp key signatures are like those in the treble and bass clefs going down, up, down, down, up, down. So in this case, it is the alto clef version which is wrong and should look like this. The tenor clef version was the correct version. Now for a flat key signature. Which of these is the correct version of D flat major? Again, all they're asking you to do is firstly to remember the first 5 words of the sentence, battle ends and down goes Charles' father, and then ensure that the answers follow the up, down, up, down, up, down rule for flats in all staves. You ought to be able to see the obvious error in the treble clef and alto clef versions. The treble clef goes battle ends and down farther. Here it is corrected, battle ends and down goes. And even if you're not a fluent reader of C clefs, you should spot that in the alto clef version, the third and fifth flats are, impossibly, the same. Here it is as it should be. With this sort of question, I often recommend that you start with the clefs with which you are most familiar. So let's have a look at the bass clef. Yes, it follows the sentence correctly. And yes, it goes up, down, up, down, up, down. So it is correct. This brings us on to the tenor clef version, which just looks absolutely correct, if you're not a fluent reader of the tenor clef. And it would be easy to mark it correct, but in fact, every single flat is wrong. It'd be okay if there were a treble clef in front of it, but a tenor clef D-flat key signature ought to look like this. The next few questions ask candidates to identify the key in which a short melody is written. Rather strangely, the ABRSM gives examples only of keys which would have sharp key signatures, and they give a selection of possible answers, only of one which will be correct. I'm not going to give you that multiple choice, but lead you through the method to find the correct answer, which should then appear in the list of possible answers. Here is example 1. The only notes that are flattened or sharpened are the Bs, which are flat. We know that this works within a key signature of 1 flat, battle, from battle ends and down goes Charles Father. We look at that last flat, B flat, and we count up 3 B, C, D for the possible minor key, D minor, or up 5 B, C, D, E, F for the possible major key, F major. Now, in all minor keys, you'd expect the 7th and quite possibly the 6th notes of the scale to be sharpened. And the 7th and 6th notes of a D minor scale are C sharp and B natural. There are no C sharps or B naturals in this example, so it can't possibly be D minor, so it must be F major. Our second example. There are several sharps, so we recall that Father Charles goes down and ends battle. And we can find sharps on F, C, D and A. There are no G sharps, but that's not a problem, as there are no G naturals either. This is simply a tune where the 6th note of the scale, the submediant, has not been used. So we can safely assume that the last sharp is A sharp, suggesting the keys of B major or G sharp minor. Okay, there are no G sharps in the tune, but what suggests that this is not G sharp is the absence of F double sharp, the sharpened 7th note of G sharp minor. So it's not in G sharp minor, this tune is in B major. But what if I give you a very similar tune? And here the only sharps are F sharp, C sharp and A sharp in the order that they appear in the Father Charles sentence. Well, we can only assume that the key signature is Father Charles, because he doesn't go down to end battle. And that the A sharp is not part of the key signature, but it is an accidental. A key signature of two sharps, F and C, suggests D major or B minor. And A sharp is the seventh note of a B minor scale, and that tells us that it isn't D major, but that it is in B minor. Now for one in the bass clef. There are only two flats, so we use battle ends. And we list the flats in the order they appear in that sentence, ends and. Well, the problem here is that there are no flat key signatures that don't start with B flat. So let's assume for a moment that there is a B flat in the key signature. Battle, ends, and. Counting up 5 from A flat gives you a key of E flat major, or counting up 3 gives you a key of C minor. Well, we'd expect E flat major to have B flat in it, but let's recall our C minor scales, which often have B natural. So that's the nasty trick. Those who set the exam are under no obligation to put a natural sign in front of the B because it is already B natural. So this example is in C minor. And now a final example. We have the following flats, B flat, A flat and D flat, but we also have a D natural and there is no sign of an E flat, but there is an E natural. What are we to make of this one? Well, using the battle ends sentence, one might well suppose that the final flat in the key signature is in fact D flat. The key signature therefore has 4 flats, B, E, A, D, battle ends and down. But the tune does not make use of the note E flat. Using the knowledge you've already gained, you'll realise this piece could be in A flat major or F minor. Now the presence of E natural and D natural strongly suggests it cannot be A flat major. And if you know your A flat major scale really well, you'll see that very quickly. However, D and E are the 6th and 7th notes above F, and we know that the 6th and 7th notes are often raised by a semitone in minor scales. So this is not A flat major, it is F minor. You'll then be faced by a question which asks that you insert the correct notes into a named scale. The example on the ABRSM practice material asks for the 6th and 7th notes of a B-flat harmonic minor scale. I don't know if we can assume that the exam will always use a harmonic minor scale. After all, assume often has the annoying habit of making an ass out of you and me. So my advice is that you know all 36 scales, 12 major, 12 harmonic minor, and 12 melodic minor. Know them intimately and know their key signatures, or how at least to work them out. Let's take as an example the question where you need to find the 6th and 7th notes of the E-flat harmonic minor scale. When looking at a flat key signature, we look at the last flat and go up 3 for the minor and up 5 for the major. So in the case of E-flat minor, we count back 3, E, D, C, to find that the key signature of E-flat minor ends with C-flat. So the key signature of E-flat minor contains the following flats: B, E, A, D, G, C. Battle ends and down goes Charles. The 6th and 7th notes of an E-flat minor scale, according to the key signature, are C-flat and D-flat. But remember to raise the 7th note by a semitone to make it C-flat and D natural. Keyboard students have a huge advantage over all other musicians on this question, but only if they've made the effort to learn all their scales. There will now follow 3 minor scales where clefs are missing, and you have to provide the correct clef from a selection. The nasty thing is that you won't be told which minor scales they are, or whether they are harmonic or melodic, so you must learn all your minor scales. The example given for the first on the ABRSM site, Information Correct, February 2024, has the 6th note flattened and the 7th note sharpened. All other notes are white. Now this neatly describes a scale you probably learnt at grade 1, hands separate, and grade 2, hands together. It's the scale of D harmonic minor. Don't forget that there are 3 forms of the minor scale you must know: the harmonic upwards and downwards, then the melodic upwards, and then the melodic downwards. You will see all forms of the minor scales at this point. In our first example, we have a scale starting on a white key, which reduces our options to 7 key signatures, and we have sharps on the 2nd and 7th notes. We know that 7th notes have usually been sharpened by an accidental, which strongly suggests that it is the first sharp on the 2nd note, which is the key signature, and it's sensible to suppose that the key signature of a single sharp is F sharp. This gives us the key of E minor, and you ought to be able to recall that the 7th note of an E minor scale is D sharp. The only clef that makes this an E minor scale is the treble clef. Another example starting on a white key, this time with a flattened 3rd and a sharpened 7th. If you know your scales well, you'll know the answer already, but if you don't, focus on that 7th. The scale is rising, so the 7th and maybe the 6th too have been raised by a semitone. If the scale is melodic, then the key signature would indicate that the 6th was flat, and the raising of that 6th note makes it A natural. Well, in that case, there are 2 flats in the key signature, and we know they must be B flat and E flat, which gives us the case of G minor. And it has F sharp as its accidental. And to make this a scale beginning on G, we need a bass clef. And another beginning on a white key, this time descending. And there are 4 flats suggesting B, E, A and D flats, battle ends and down. If indeed the final flat is D flat, then by counting up 3, we know that the scale is F minor, melodic, descending. Remember that the descending version of any melodic minor scale follows the key signature with no accidentals. To make the last or first notes F in this case, we need an alto clef, and then we can check that indeed those flats are B, E, A and D. What a lot of sharps in this scale. And that's the dead giveaway. It starts on a white key, and you should be able to recall that of the white key starting minors, A has no sharps or flats in the key signature, D has 1 flat, G has 2 flats, C has 3 flats, and F has 4 flats. That leaves us with a choice of E minor and B minor. And E minor, we know, is only 1 sharp. So this really has to be B minor. And for this to be B minor, we need a tenor clef. And now we can check and discover that this is indeed a scale of B minor, melodic minor ascending. And there it is with C sharp, F sharp, G sharp, and A sharp. Even more sharps in this next one, including the first and last notes, and a double sharp on the 7th note. So we know that the 7th note would be an ordinary sharp in a descending melodic minor, and therefore part of the key signature. We can also see that the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th notes are all sharps. When you remember that the keyboard has black keys grouped in 2s and 3s, we realise that at least one of those sharps is a white key. Remember that the 7th note is a semitone away from the tonic, and we have a choice of 5 sharp keys. Well, we can rule out A sharp minor because it isn't on the syllabus, because it has 7 sharps in the key signature. And we can rule out F sharp and C sharp minors because the notes a semitone below F sharp and C sharp are E sharp and B sharp and cannot be labelled with a double sharp. We therefore have a choice of D sharp minor or G sharp minor. Remember that D sharp is also the same as E flat minor, and this is where your practical knowledge of scales plus the picture of the keyboard you drew from memory at the start of the exam comes into play. On your picture, play your scales of E flat and G sharp minors, both forms rising. Well, D sharp melodic minor goes D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, C double sharp, D sharp. And G sharp melodic minor goes G sharp, A sharp, B, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F double sharp, G sharp. And the 3rd note of our scale is white, so it has to be the scale of G sharp minor, which means we have to have a treble clef. And our final example has 6 flats, not including the upper tonic, which we must not count. It is descending, and we know that descending melodic minor scales follow the key signature. This suggests a key signature of 6 flats, B, E, A, D, G, C, which indicates a scale of E flat minor, which requires a bass clef, and then we can check that an E flat minor scale descending goes E flat, D flat, C flat, B flat, A flat, G flat, F and E flat. I really do hope that this convinces you that you must know all your scales, not just the ones on the grade 5 piano syllabus. If you don't, then visit my scales page as a matter of urgency. Following on from the questions on minor scales will be a couple of chromatic scales to which you will need to answer true or false. Here is one such example. This is the correctly written chromatic scale beginning on G flat. Well, I hope you can see that this breaks the rule concerning enharmonics, and in the worst way possible. The first and last notes are G flat and F sharp, which are the same sounding note, but an octave apart, but they should have the same letter name. They've both got to be G flat. So this is false. However, If that last note had been respelt as G flat, there would have been nothing wrong with it. Remember with these scales that you have to check any given chromatic scale against the picture you drew of a keyboard. Check every note against its neighbour. A common deliberate mistake on the part of the examiner is to put E sharp and F natural or B and C flat next to each other. Assessment of this unit finishes off with some true or false answers to questions like this. This is the dominant in the key of C minor. This is the submediant in the key of A flat major. The best way of answering these questions is not to look at the note offered by the examiner on the screen, but first to ask yourself what the dominant of C minor or the submediant of A flat major would be, and then checking if the examiner's suggestion on the screen matches. Remember that the mediant and dominant are the third and fifth notes above the tonic, and the submediant and subdominant are the third and fifth notes below the tonic. Do not make the mistake of thinking that the submediant is below the mediant. If there's any doubt in your mind, it is no bad idea to copy out onto your rough paper from memory the scale with the degrees of the scale found at the bottom of the second page of the printable support material for this unit. One last word. I hope you now realise the importance of knowing all your major and minor scales intimately. Do keep these at the forefront of your knowledge, because that knowledge is essential for this unit as well as for units 4 and 5, where we will look at intervals and chords. See you soon.